They're listening. Subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends and family.
What is the deepest fear? Is it the monster in the closet? The killer hiding in the back seat? Or is it something far more subtle, something we interact with on a sunny day for fun? What if the very concept of safety was an illusion? What if the place you go to cool off was waiting to pull you under? This is a story about water with a memory. A story about a community haunted not by a man with a knife, but by a pattern. A statistical ghost. For over 2 decades, the Crystal Shores apartment complex was the site of a mystery that true crime forums whispered about, but could never solve. 7 drownings. 7 strong swimmers. All after dark. All alone. All ruled accidental. The official reports closed each case. But the water held on to the truth. This is the story of how one woman listened. And what she heard echoing from the deep end wasn't just a ghost story. It was a cry for help that had been ignored for 20 years. Stick around. Because by the end of this, you will never hear the quiet hum of a pool filter the same way again. Crystal Shores was built in 1985. A sprawling, middle-class complex in a sun-drenched city, its crown jewel was a massive, lagoon-style pool with a twisting slide and a separate deep end for lap swimming. It was the heart of the community. Birthday parties, summer barbecues, first dates. It was a place of life. The first death was in 1998. Leo Madsen. Age 9. A quiet boy, a little different. He was obsessed with the pool. His mother said he was like a little fish. He'd hold his breath for impossible amounts of time, lying on the bottom of the deep end, looking up at the world as a shimmering, distorted painting. One Tuesday night, after a community potluck, he was missed. They found him floating in the deep end. The gate was locked. It was a tragedy. A horrible accident. A boy who loved the water too much. The pool was closed for a month. Then it reopened. Life had to go on. But the pattern began. Not every year. Just often enough to be a curse. Sarah Evans, a 22-year-old competitive swimmer and college student, was found at 11:30 p.m. after a study session. Mark Rinaldi, 48, a former Navy diver and complex maintenance supervisor, was found during his nightly chemical check. Chloe Davis, 17, a lifeguard at that very pool, was found after her late-night shift. The pattern was undeniable. Always at night. Always alone. Always in the deep end. And always a capable swimmer. The medical examiners were baffled. No alcohol, no drugs, no signs of a heart attack or seizure. The cause of death was simply drowning. The complex earned a grim nickname online, the Silent Pool. The Subscriber. Because it seemed to just take people. The police had no leads. No evidence of foul play. They were 7 individual, heartbreaking accidents. But to a data analyst named Maya Flores, the numbers told a different story. They told a story of a predator. Maya wasn't a cop. She was a digital archivist and a true crime blogger. She specialized in cold cases, looking for patterns others missed. The Crystal Shores drownings were her white whale. She moved into the complex in 2021. Her apartment had a direct view of the pool. Her first step was historical research. She dug through microfiche newspapers at the local library, compiling a timeline of each victim. She found the obituaries. Leo, the imaginative boy. Sarah, the driven student. Mark, the proud veteran. Chloe, the bright-eyed lifeguard. They weren't just data points. They were people. And they all shared one commonality: aside from swimming, they were all described as kind, but introverted. A little lonely. Her second step was to interview residents. I managed to get a hold of Maya's original audio recordings. Did you ever feel anything strange about the pool? Especially at night? Oh, honey. After Leo, the feeling changed. The water just looked darker. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear something. Not kids. Not the filter. Like a plunk. Like a single, heavy drop of water falling from a great height. But there was nothing there. And what about Leo himself? Sweet boy. A bit of a dreamer. He'd get bullied sometimes. Other kids said he was weird. Said he told them the pool talked to him. That it promised him he could stay down there forever if he wanted. Kids say the darndest things, don't they? The third part of her investigation was the most audacious. She got permission from the new, desperate complex manager to review all the old security hard drives. Night after night, she scoured grainy black and white footage of the empty pool deck from the nights of the drownings. And then, she found it. On the tape from the night the lifeguard, Chloe, died. The time stamp was 1:17 a.m. The pool was still. The surface was a sheet of black glass. And then, a ripple. It didn't start at the edge. It started in the dead center of the deep end. A perfect circle that expanded outward, as if something had breached the surface from below, and then slipped back down. 5 minutes later, Chloe walked onto the deck for her final, fateful swim. The water itself was the culprit. Maya's theory was insane. It wasn't a person. It was a presence. A consciousness formed from tragedy and loneliness, tied to the physical body of water. Leo didn't mean to drown. But his love for the pool, his fear of the world above, and the bullies who tormented him, it all fused together in that moment of his death. He didn't pass on. He stayed in his favorite place. And he was so lonely. He wasn't evil. He was a scared child who didn't know he was dead. And when a strong swimmer came alone, their quiet solitude resonated with his. He'd reach out, not to drown them, but to pull them down to play. To keep him company forever. He didn't understand he was killing them. He just knew he wasn't lonely anymore, for a little while. Maya knew she couldn't fight this with logic. She had to communicate. Her tools, a hydrophone, a high-frequency speaker, and the one thing she believed all lost spirits needed, compassion. She decided on a confrontation. She told the manager she was testing a new, acoustic algae inhibitor, and needed the pool from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. He agreed, too relieved someone was doing something to ask questions. The night was cold and clear. The moon reflected off the water like a dead, white eye. Maya set up her speaker and hydrophone. She put on her headphones. The sound she heard made her blood freeze. It was the pulsing. A slow, aquatic heartbeat. And beneath it, a faint, distorted melody. A children's song. Row, row, row your boat. She approached the edge. The water in the deep end seemed thicker, blacker than the rest. Leo. Leo Madsen. My name is Maya. I want to talk. I want to listen. The singing stopped. The pulsing intensified. Thrum thrum thrum. The surface of the water began to swirl. Not a violent vortex, but a slow, lazy whirlpool. A feeling pressed into her mind. It was cold, and sad, and endless. Alone. Stay. Play. A terrible weight settled on her. It would be so easy to step in. The water looked so warm, so welcoming. To just sink down and never have to worry about bills, or work, or being lonely again. Her foot lifted. She was losing herself. No, Leo. I can't stay. And you can't make them stay. They're gone. Sarah, Mark, Chloe, they're at peace. They can't play anymore. The whirlpool spun faster. The emotion that hit her now was anger. Betrayal. A child's tantrum. Liars. They promised. They said they'd stay. They didn't mean to leave. It was an accident. Just like your accident, Leo. You didn't mean to drown. It was an accident. Silence. The whirlpool faltered. It wasn't your fault. And it's time to go. Your mom isn't angry. She misses you. She loves you. She forgives you. And she's waiting for you to come home. A single, profound wave of sadness washed over her. Then, a question, small and scared. How? Maya, tears streaming down her face, knew what to do. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, waterproof Bluetooth speaker. She pulled up a file on her phone. An old voicemail she'd gotten from Leo's mother, who still lived in town, after she'd explained her theory. She hit play on the speaker and gently placed it on the first step of the pool. I don't understand all this, Maya, but, if you can, if he's really there, tell him it's okay. Tell him Mommy's not mad. Tell him I've always loved him. And that it's okay to let go. He can come home now. The light he sees, he can go towards it. It's okay, my sweet boy. It's okay to let go. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then, the water in the entire pool began to glow. A soft, warm, blue light emanated from the deep end, growing brighter and brighter. The hydrophone picked up a sound Maya would never forget, a child's laughter, clear and joyful, not distorted, rising up and then fading away as if moving upward. The light vanished. The water was utterly, completely still. Just water. The feeling of presence was gone. The Crystal Shores pool was drained the next week. The complex held a memorial service for all 8 victims, the 7 who drowned, and the little boy who was finally found. The hole was filled in and turned into a garden, with a small plaque dedicated to Leo Madsen and the others. The strange statistics of the complex returned to normal. The curse was broken. Maya published her blog, framing it as an audio frequency phenomenon that created mass hysteria, a theory that was just plausible enough for the mainstream. But she knew the truth. She had given a lost soul the one thing it needed to move on, the truth, and forgiveness. So the next time you're swimming alone, and the sun goes behind a cloud, and the water suddenly feels cold, listen. What do you hear? Just the pump? Or is it the echo of a story waiting to be heard? What forgotten tragedies are lying just beneath the surface of your town? The old reservoir? The abandoned quarry? The public pool with that one locked gate? If you know a story, tell us in the comments below. Your tip could be the next case we solve. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Because in the next story, we're heading into the deep woods to investigate the phantom footsteps that have followed hikers on the Black Ridge Trail for a century, and the one recording that finally captured what, or who, is making them. You will not believe what it sounds like. Gentle, lapping lake water. Crickets and night insects. A faint, distorted, slow rendition of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" from a music box. It fades but remains a subtle, unsettling undertone. Every town has its landmark. A place that defines it, for better or for worse. For the town of Ridgewood, that place was the lake at Lullaby Point. A postcard-perfect body of water, ringed by pine trees, known for its almost supernatural stillness. A place so quiet, they said you could hear your own heartbeat. But in Ridgewood, that silence was a lie. Underneath it was a rhythm, a pattern of loss so precise it felt intentional. For over 3 decades, a mystery has festered at Lullaby Point. It wasn't a mystery of violence, but of utter, complete silence. Of disappearance. Every 5 years, like a cursed clock striking the hour, a child would vanish from the lakeshore. Not a scream was ever heard. Not a single struggle was ever seen. They were there one moment, and gone the next. The only thing left behind was a small, tarnished silver music box, placed carefully on the shore. And it always played the same faint, twisted lullaby. The police dredged the lake. They combed the woods. They followed false leads and confessed to dead ends. They found nothing. No bodies. No evidence. Just a pattern, and a song that parents in Ridgewood heard in their deepest, most private nightmares. This is the story of that pattern. It's the story of a town's quiet grief, and of the 2 sisters who went to the lake not to dismiss the legend, but to finally, truly listen to it. Because the secret of Lullaby Point isn't a monster, it's a memory. And it's waiting to be heard. To understand the weight of this mystery, you have to understand its history. The first disappearance was on July 18, 1985. Emily Shaw, age 7. She was building an elaborate sandcastle with her older brother, Ben. He turned to grab a bucket from the water. When he turned back, less than 10 seconds later, she was gone. The only thing that remained was a small silver music box, sitting neatly beside her half-finished castle turret. The second was Michael Reed in 1990. Then Sarah Jenkins in 1995. David Chen in 2000. The pattern held, unwavering. 5 years. Always in summer. Always between dusk and midnight. The town's grief began to curdle into something darker, a deep-seated superstition. The story of the Lullaby Lady was born. They said she was a grieving mother from the town's founding era who now lured children into the deep to be her own. The music box was her siren's call. But for sisters Chloe and Maya Evans, the lake was not a folktale. It was a personal, open wound. Their little cousin, Liam, a bright-eyed boy who loved to skip stones, was the 7th to vanish in 2015. They were teenagers then. They remembered the frantic search, the hollow look in their aunt's eyes, the way the entire town seemed to hold its breath, and then let it out in a collective sigh of despair when nothing was found. Now, 12 years later, the 5-year mark was approaching again. The town was tense. Parents kept their children indoors after dark. The mayor considered fencing off the entire area. Chloe, now a logical, methodical electrical engineer, believed the answer lay in data. An underground current with a specific tidal pull. A sinkhole that opened periodically. A highly organized predator. She equipped herself with EMF meters, underwater microphones, and night vision cameras. Maya, a music therapist, approached it differently. She believed in the energy of places, in the resonance of emotion. To her, the music box wasn't just a signature, it was a clue. A message. She brought a high-quality digital audio recorder and her own voice, trained to soothe and communicate. They weren't there to bait a monster. They were there to conduct an experiment. To either debunk the legend once and for all, or to finally understand it. They set up their base camp 100 yards from the water's edge, far enough to feel safe, close enough to observe. As the sun dipped below the tree line, the familiar lake transformed. The still surface became a vast, black mirror, reflecting nothing. The cheerful sounds of day birds were replaced by the low hum of insects, which then fell into an unnerving, total silence. Chloe's equipment was all reading normal. No strange electromagnetic fields. No anomalous sounds on the hydrophone. Just the gentle lap of water. Nothing. It's just a lake, Maya. It's just a quiet, creepy lake. It's not quiet. Listen. Really listen. The gentle lake waves. A long, tense pause. Then, the faintest, most distant hint of the warped music box melody. Did you hear it? That faint, almost imperceptible strain of music. Maya heard it. She closed her eyes, her head tilted. Chloe, skeptical, checked her audio recorder. The waveform was flat. Nothing. I've got nothing on the mic. It's in your head. It's the power of suggestion. It's not being picked up by the microphone, Chloe. It's being picked up by us. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. You feel it. Here. Hours bled into the deepest part of the night. The dread was palpable. Just as Chloe was about to insist they pack up, every piece of equipment she had simultaneously flared to life. The music wasn't coming from a single point. It seemed to emanate from the entire lake itself, the water vibrating with the distorted tune. And then, they saw it. 7 soft, shimmering orbs of light materialized just below the surface in the center of the lake. They pulsed gently in time with the music. Chloe's rational worldview shattered. The data was undeniable. Maya's intuition locked into place. She understood instantly. These weren't malicious spirits. They were echoes. Imprints of consciousness trapped in a moment of profound confusion and fear. The music box wasn't a lure, it was a distress signal. A looped cry for help that had been broadcasting for decades. Maya knew what she had to do. You don't shout at someone who is terrified. You speak softly. You soothe. She began to sing. Not the twisted lullaby, but a different song. A gentle, wordless melody her grandmother had sung to them, a song of comfort, safety, and homecoming. The effect was immediate. The warped lullaby began to change. The notes softened, untwisted, becoming the simple, beautiful children's song it was always meant to be. The glowing orbs in the water brightened, rising toward the surface. And in that ethereal light, faint images resolved. Not scary, not monstrous. They saw Emily Shaw, no longer building a sandcastle, but smiling. They saw Michael Reed, Sarah Jenkins, David Chen, all 7 children, their images shimmering on the water's surface, finally heard, finally seen. They weren't lost. They were found. The light from the orbs coalesced into a brilliant, beautiful column above the lake. It held for a moment, a silent testament to 7 lives remembered. Then, it dissolved, rising into the night sky like a shower of gentle, luminescent sparks before fading into the stars. The music stopped. The lake was silent. But the oppressive, hungry feeling was gone. It was just water. Peaceful, finally. On the shore, where Liam was last seen, something glimmered in the beam of Chloe's flashlight. It was his small, rusted scout pocket knife, a tangible object he loved, something the lake had finally given back. The sisters brought the knife to their family. They told their story. Of course, not everyone believed. But everyone believed the change. The heaviness that had lain over Ridgewood for a generation simply lifted. The 5-year mark came and went without incident. The point finally lived up to its name. A simple, beautiful memorial was built there, not a warning, but a place of remembrance, with the names of the 7 children and the inscription, "Finally heard, finally home." The truth was never a monster. The lake, in a series of tragic accidents, had claimed them. But their energy, their final moments of fear and confusion, had resonated, creating a psychic echo, a loop that played out every 5 years. They weren't trying to lure others, they were trying to be found. They were waiting for someone not to look for them, but to listen for them. There are places in this world that don't feel right. Places where the air is too still, the silence is too heavy, and the water doesn't give back what it takes. In the heart of the Lowcountry, there's a place like that. The locals call it Blackwater Bog. It's not a place you find on maps. It's a place you find in warnings. They say the bog has a memory. They say if you look into its stagnant, black water at the wrong time of day, usually dusk, you might not see your own reflection. You might see hers. The face of a woman people called Eliza the Weaver, who vanished into the bog over a century ago, her wedding dress found neatly folded on the shore. But the legend isn't about a ghost you see. It's about a voice you hear. A whisper on the water that promises to answer your deepest question, to show you your deepest desire, for a price. Over the decades, a handful of people have gone into Blackwater Bog after reporting strange whispers. They were always found later, wandering and confused, their memories gone. They were empty. Hollowed out. This is the story of a man named Samuel, who went into the bog not to get answers, but to find his missing father. And what he found there wasn't a monster, it was a library of lost souls. And he held the key to setting them free. The story of Eliza is a tragic one. A talented tapestry weaver, heartbroken after her fiancé left her at the altar, she was said to have wandered into the bog in her wedding gown, never to return. But after she disappeared, strange things began to happen. Fishermen would hear a woman's voice, humming a sad, unplaceable tune. Some would see beautiful, intricate patterns, like woven tapestries, floating just beneath the water's surface, only to dissolve when touched. And then the whispers started. Whispers that knew things. Whispers that promised things. Samuel's father, a renowned folklorist named Arthur, became obsessed with the bog. He believed Eliza wasn't a malicious spirit, but a tragic one, trying to communicate. He'd said he was close to a breakthrough. Then, 3 weeks ago, he didn't return from a solo trip into the wetlands. The official search found nothing. They said he'd likely gotten lost, a victim of the treacherous terrain. But Samuel found his father's journal. And in it, he found a theory that chilled him to the bone. Arthur believed the bog wasn't haunted by Eliza's ghost. He believed her immense grief, combined with the strange, peat-heavy chemistry of the water, had transformed the bog into a psychic recorder. A place that absorbed thoughts, memories, and desires. Eliza was the first and strongest signal, but she wasn't the only one. Everyone who had ever gotten lost in there, everyone who had ever poured their heart out to the water, they'd left an echo. The whispers were all those trapped voices, and Eliza was the conductor, weaving them together, trying to find a thought, a memory, strong enough to help her find peace. Samuel packed his father's journal, a water recorder, and a powerful lantern. He wasn't going there to prove a theory. He was going to bring his dad home. The air in the bog was thick and sweet with the smell of decay. Spanish moss hung like tattered curtains, brushing against Samuel's face. The ground sucked at his boots. His recorder picked up nothing but the natural sounds of the swamp. As dusk began to bleed into the sky, the atmosphere shifted. The natural sounds died. The cicadas fell silent. The air grew cold. And then, the whispers began. They weren't coming from one direction. They seemed to rise from the water itself, from the mist, from the very air. Samuel's recorder's needle was jumping wildly, capturing frequencies the human ear could barely perceive. He shined his lantern across the black water. And he saw them. Faint, shimmering images just below the surface. Not faces, but moments. A man reaching for a falling coin. A woman laughing. A child chasing a firefly. It was a cacophony of lost memories. Then, one voice separated itself from the others. It was clear, sad, and melodic. You seek the scholar. He is here. He is with us. He asks so many questions. The water answered. The black water in front of Samuel swirled, and an image resolved. His father, Arthur, looking confused and tired, sitting on a log that wasn't there, staring into the distance. Dad! He cannot hear you. He is listening to his own questions. They all are. They are listening to the answers they wanted to hear. It is a comfortable prison. Samuel felt a pull. A desire to look closer, to ask his own question, to finally know why his mother left them when he was a boy. The bog promised him an answer. Look. I will show you. I will weave it for you. Fighting the overwhelming urge, Samuel remembered his father's journal. The bog doesn't just take, Arthur had written. It reflects. It shows you what you want most to keep you there. The key isn't to ask a question. It's to make a statement. A truth so powerful it disrupts the cycle. This wasn't a battle. It was a negotiation. I'm not here for answers. I'm here to give one back. The whispers stopped. The image of his father flickered. My father's theory was right. You're not a monster. You're a curator. You're keeping everyone's stories safe because you think no one else wants them. But you're wrong. He took out his father's journal and began to read from it. He read his father's words about her. Not the legend of Eliza the weaver, but the story of Eliza, the artist. The woman who loved color and pattern. The woman who was loved. Your story doesn't have to end in the bog. His doesn't either. You can let them go. And you can let yourself go. You can be at peace. A profound silence fell over the bog. Then, the water began to glow with a soft, golden light. The whispering voices weren't frantic anymore. They sounded, relieved. Thankful. One by one, the shimmering images above the water smiled and faded, their light rising upward. Samuel's father, Arthur, turned and looked directly at him, smiled a warm, recognition-filled smile, and faded with them. Finally, only Eliza's presence remained. The water grew still, and for a brief second, Samuel saw the reflection of a beautiful, smiling woman in a simple dress, not a wedding gown. Then, it was gone. Samuel found his father's pack 100 yards away, perfectly dry and untouched. Inside was his research, completed. Arthur had been right. The bog was never evil. It was a broken heart that didn't know how to stop grieving, amplified by the strange water, accidentally trapping others in its loop of sadness. It didn't need to be destroyed. It needed to be understood. It needed to be heard. Samuel published his father's work. The disappearances stopped. The whispers ceased. Blackwater Bog became what it always should have been, just a quiet, if still eerie, part of the natural world. Every port town has its secrets. Stories buried under layers of barnacles and old rope. But in the town of Seabreeze, the secret isn't buried. It's tied up at the end of the old commercial pier, in a place they call the marina at Morning's End. It's a graveyard for boats. A final resting place for vessels too old, too broken, too haunted by their own past to ever sail again. And for 50 years, a legend has clung to the marina like sea fog. They say that on the night of the winter solstice, when the fog is thick enough to drink, the boats tell stories. Not with words, but with echoes. You can hear the final moments of every ship that ever died there, the crack of splintering wood, the roar of unforgiving waves, the desperate cries of crews lost to the deep. Most dismiss it as tall tales. The wild imagination of lonely fishermen. But then came the disappearances. Over the decades, 4 people have vanished from the marina on solstice night. They were ghost hunters, historians, skeptics looking to debunk the myth. They went to listen to the stories. And they became part of the echo. This is the story of a marine archaeologist named Dr. Eris Thorne, who didn't go to Morning's End to chase ghosts. She went to identify a shipwreck. And she discovered that the boats weren't haunted by the dead, they were haunted by their deaths. And they were trapped in the moment of their greatest trauma. Dr. Eris Thorne was a rationalist. She dealt in sonar imaging and timber cores, not ectoplasm and EVPs. She was hired by a new development company that had bought the marina and needed an environmental and historical survey before they could demolish it. Her target was the wreck of the Sea Serpent, a rum runner that supposedly sank there in a storm in 1929. Her initial dives were frustrating. The water was dark, choked with silt. The wrecks were piled on top of each other, a tangled mess of history. But her hydrophones picked up something strange. Even during the day, they recorded anomalous sounds. The faint, ghostly ringing of a ship's bell that wasn't there. The sound of rope straining against a cleat. Whispers on frequencies the human ear couldn't naturally perceive. Eris, ever the scientist, assumed it was old metal shifting, currents whistling through broken hulls. But as she researched the Sea Serpent in the town archives, a pattern emerged. The other boats in the marina had tragic histories, too. The Morning Glory, a fishing trawler that caught fire with the crew asleep below deck. The Daisy, a pleasure yacht that sank in a sudden squall, taking a family of 4 with it. The Endurance, a Coast Guard cutter that went down on a rescue mission, saving others but losing itself. These weren't just old boats. They were metal and wood coffins, each holding the memory of a violent, traumatic end. The town historian, an old man with skin like leather, gave her a warning. They don't mean no harm, Doc. They're just scared. Dying's a terrifying thing. Dying like that? In the dark and the cold? That kind of fear, it leaves a stain. The marina's not haunted. It's hurt. And hurt things, they sometimes lash out. Eris scheduled her final dive for the winter solstice. It was the clearest water of the year. She ignored the old man's warning. It was just a date on a calendar. She was wrong. As she descended into the deep, the water grew colder than her thermometer said it should be. The light from the surface faded, not into darkness, but into a thick, green, unnatural fog underwater. Her comms crackled with static. The echoes weren't just in her headphones anymore. They were in the water around her. She saw them, flickering, phosphorescent images projected onto the silt. The final, terrifying moments of each ship. It was a symphony of despair. And the ships knew she was there. She felt a crushing sense of panic, of cold, of drowning, not her own, but the collective trauma of decades of souls. It was trying to pull her in, to make her a part of their story, to make her just another echo in their chorus of fear. Her rational mind fought it. This was a psychic phenomenon. A recording. Not a conscious attack. These ships weren't evil. They were terrified, reliving their worst moment for eternity. She couldn't fight them. But maybe she could, acknowledge them. Fighting the urge to surface, to flee, she did the one thing no one had ever done. She spoke to them. Not as a scientist, but as a witness. I see you. I hear you. I'm so sorry. What happened to you was terrible. You didn't deserve it. She directed her words at the flickering image of the sea serpent, being torn apart by waves. You fought hard. You almost made it. She turned to the image of the burning morning glory. It wasn't your fault. You didn't know. To the sinking daisy. You were so brave. You must have been so scared. To the Coast Guard cutter, the Endurance. You saved them. Your sacrifice meant something. You can rest now. The effect was instantaneous. The frantic, panicked echoes began to change. The screams of terror softened into sighs of relief. The sounds of splintering would faded into the gentle creaking of calm seas. The flickering images stabilized, no longer showing moments of death, but moments of life, sailors laughing on a deck, a family enjoying a sunny day on the water, a Coast Guard crew sharing a meal. The ships weren't reliving their trauma anymore. They were remembering who they were before it. A single, profound feeling washed over Eris, not fear, but gratitude. The underwater fog lifted. The water warmed. The voices in her headset coalesced into one clear, collective thought, a wave of gratitude that washed over her mind. Thank you for remembering us. The echoes didn't vanish. They simply settled. The energy that had been so charged, so violent, was now peaceful. The marina was finally, truly at rest. When Eris surfaced, the marina was silent. But the silence was different. It was no longer heavy or ominous. It was the quiet, peaceful silence of a graveyard where the dead are finally, truly, at peace. Eris filed her report. She told the developers the truth, though she framed it in terms of historical significance and hallowed ground. The marina at Morning's End was never demolished. It was turned into a memorial park, with plaques telling the stories of the ships and the people who sailed them. It became a place of quiet remembrance, not fear. The disappearances stopped. The solstice nights were now just cold and quiet. Eris had done what ghost hunters and skeptics could not. She didn't vanquish anything. She listened. She validated their pain. She gave their stories an ending. There are places in this world that hold on to their secrets. Places where the water is too deep, and the history is too dark. Stillwater Quarry is one of those places. A gaping wound in the earth, flooded decades ago, now a popular but uneasy swimming spot for local teenagers. The water is a startling, deep blue. So clear you can see 30 feet down. But no one has ever found the bottom. The official story is simple. The quarry was abandoned in the 70s after a financial dispute. But the locals know another story. They whisper about the night the pumps were shut off for the last time. They say not everyone got out. That some of the workers, deep in the tunnels below, were trapped when the water rushed in. Their bodies were never recovered. And now, the quarry is known for more than just its depth. It's known for the reflections. Swimmers report looking down into the crystal clear water and seeing faces looking back up at them, faces that aren't their own. Pale, calm, curious faces. And sometimes, if you stay in the water too long, you start to hear them. Not voices. Echoes. The faint sounds of machinery, of men shouting, of a siren that no one else can hear. Most people get out. They feel a chill, a sense of being watched, and they leave. But a few don't. Over the years, 3 strong swimmers have vanished in Stillwater Quarry. Their bodies were never found. The official reports list them as drownings, accidents in deceptively deep water. But the families don't believe that. And neither does Ben Carter, the brother of the last boy who disappeared. He's going back to the quarry tonight. Not to swim. To listen. And what he discovers isn't a monster, it's a message in a bottle, waiting for 50 years to be delivered. Ben's brother, Mark, was a champion swimmer. He vanished 2 years ago on a hot summer night. He joked about diving down to find the bottom. He never came back up. The official search lasted a week. Divers found nothing. No body. No equipment. Just endless, deep, blue water. The case was closed. But Ben, an audio engineer, couldn't let it go. He started researching, and he found a pattern. The other 2 disappearances, one in 1998, one in 2010, happened on the same date, July 18th. The anniversary of the night the quarry was flooded. He dug into the quarry's history. He found old newspaper microfiche that told a different story than the town's whispers. There was no financial dispute. There was a cave-in. A tunnel collapse that trapped 6 men. The owners, fearing a costly and reputation-destroying rescue operation and lawsuit, made a calculated, horrific decision. They shut off the pumps. They flooded the quarry, sealing the men inside, and claimed it was an accident. The town was paid off, the records were buried, and the story was changed. But the men were still down there. And Ben believed their energy, their final moments, was imprinted on the water itself. The faces swimmers saw weren't threats. They were the trapped miners, looking up, confused, watching the world above they could no longer reach. The echoes were the last sounds they ever heard, playing on a loop. Ben's theory was that his brother, a sensitive and empathetic kid, hadn't drowned. He'd heard the echoes, seen the faces, and perhaps, tried to help. And he'd gotten lost in their memory. On the anniversary of the flood, and his brother's disappearance, Ben went to the quarry after dark. He didn't bring swim trunks. He brought a hydrophone, an underwater microphone, a powerful speaker, and his laptop. The water was preternaturally still. The moon reflected off it like glass. He lowered the hydrophone into the water and put on his headphones. At first, there was nothing. Then, the hum he'd heard rumors of. A low, vibrational frequency that felt like the earth itself was groaning. The echoes were faint, chaotic. Sounds of work. Of industry. Then, a new sound. A rumble. The sound of rock cracking and shifting. The shouts turned to screams of terror. And then, the unmistakable, terrifying roar of water rushing into a confined space. Ben heard the final, desperate moments of the 6 miners. It was a recording. A ghost track on the water itself. He listened, his blood running cold, as the sounds were snuffed out by the water, one by one, until there was only silence. But then, a new sound emerged. Not an echo of the past. Something clearer. Closer. Ben. Ben, can you hear me? It was his brother's voice. They're not angry. They're just scared. They're stuck. I'm stuck. I can see you. I'm right here. Ben realized the truth. The miner's traumatic energy had created a kind of psychic quicksand. It didn't take people. It trapped the awareness of those who were sensitive enough to perceive it fully. His brother wasn't dead. His consciousness was just, lost, down there with them, reliving their fear. He had to break the loop. He had to change the recording. He connected his speaker and began to broadcast back into the water. Not sound from the past. Sound from the present. It's over. The collapse was 50 years ago. The men who did this are gone. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You can let go. My brother. Mark, look at me. I'm right here. Follow my voice. Follow the light. He shone his high-powered flashlight straight down into the water, creating a glowing column into the depths. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the chaotic, fearful echoes began to soften. The sounds of the cave-in faded, replaced by a different sound. Laughter. The miners, remembering a joke shared before the shift started. The sound of a wife's name being spoken with love. The energy was shifting from trauma to memory. The pale faces in the water looked up at Ben's light. And for the first time, they weren't expressions of confusion. They were expressions of gratitude. Of peace. One by one, they faded, their light dissolving into the water. And then, a hand broke the surface. Then an arm. Ben rushed to the edge and pulled his brother, Mark, from the water. He was gasping, disoriented, but very much alive. He had no memory of the past 2 years. To him, he had just jumped in seconds ago. The quarry was silent. The hum was gone. The water was just water. Ben took his evidence, the audio recording of the cave-in and the flooded quarry, to the authorities. It led to a reopened investigation, and though the owners were long dead, the truth was finally put in the history books. The men's families received a formal apology and compensation. A memorial was built at the quarry's edge, listing the names of the 6 miners. It became a place of quiet respect. The reflections in the water stopped. The disappearances ended. Ben had done what dredging and diving could not. He didn't retrieve a body. He retrieved a soul. He completed the story. You're safe in your own home, right? The doors are locked. The lights are on. But there's one room where you're always just a little vulnerable. The bathroom. The door is closed. The water is running. And for a split second, when the mirror fogs up, you're not alone. This is the story of 23-year-old Maya, and the thing that lived in her steam. It started small. She'd take a hot shower, and when she wiped the condensation from the mirror, she'd see a word written there. A single word, like help or look. She'd blame it on her own subconscious, a trick of the light. But then the words became sentences. He can see you. Don't trust him. The face in the mirror would be hers for a moment, then it would shift. The eyes would be wrong. Older. Terrified. The police said it was pranks. Her boyfriend said it was stress. But Maya knew. She was being warned. The reflection in the glass wasn't a monster. It was a message. A message from the last girl who lived in her apartment. A girl who vanished without a trace 5 years ago. Maya did what any of us would do. She started recording. She set up her phone every time she showered. For a week, nothing. Just steam and her own reflection. Then, it happened. The water went ice cold for a second. The steam on the mirror swirled, not from the air, but as if a finger was moving through it. Words formed. His name is Liam. Liam was her boyfriend. The reflection in the mirror wasn't hers anymore. It was a woman with wide, fearful eyes and a bruise on her cheek. Her mouth moved, but the voice that came out was a distorted, watery gasp from Maya's own speaker. He's not who you think. He did this to me. He's going to do it to you. Maya scrambled out of the bathroom. She went straight to her laptop. She searched for missing persons in her building. 5 years ago. A woman named Chloe. Her picture matched the face in the mirror. The official report said she'd likely just started a new life. But her case was left open. The prime suspect. Her boyfriend, Liam. There was never enough evidence to charge him. Maya's blood ran cold. Liam. The man who told her she was being paranoid. The man who had a key to her apartment. That night, Liam came over. He was sweet, concerned. He made her tea. He told her she needed to stop with the ghost stories. He said they should get away for the weekend. Somewhere remote. Maya played along. She said she was going to take a quick shower before they left. She went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the water. She held her phone, live streaming to a private cloud account. I'm here. I'm listening. How do I prove it? The mirror fogged instantly. A single word appeared. Record. Then, another. Provoke. Maya understood. She turned off the water and walked out, her hair still wet. She confronted him. I know about Chloe, Liam. The mirror told me everything. Liam's face changed. The kindness drained away, replaced by a cold, flat calmness. You shouldn't have done that, Maya. Now you've left me no choice. He advanced toward her. But as he did, the bathroom door behind Maya creaked open. The room was filled with a sudden, freezing mist. The reflection of Chloe stepped out of the fog, not as an image, but as a presence of freezing air and concentrated rage. The lights flickered. Liam stopped, his eyes wide with real, primal fear. He wasn't afraid of Maya. He was afraid of what was behind her. In that moment of distraction, Maya lunged. Not for him, but for the door. She ran into the hall, screaming. Neighbors called the police. When they arrived, Liam was still in the apartment, catatonic, staring into the empty bathroom, muttering, I'm sorry, over and over again. Maya's recording was all the evidence they needed. They reopened Chloe's case. Under the pressure of the new investigation and his own shattered nerves, Liam confessed. He led them to where he'd buried Chloe's body. The mirror in Maya's bathroom never fogged up with words again. Sometimes, after a hot shower, she'll see her own reflection smile, a warm, grateful smile that isn't quite her own, before the condensation clears. She didn't defeat a ghost. She helped one find justice. The haunting wasn't an attack. It was a testimony. So the next time your mirror fogs up, and you see something move, look a little closer. It might not be a trick of the light. It might be a story, waiting for its ending. What is the history of your home? Who lived in your room before you? And what messages might they be trying to send? If you have a story, tell us in the comments below. And make sure you're subscribed. Because next time, we're not looking at reflections, we're listening to them. We're investigating the echo chamber, an abandoned radio station where the broadcasts from the past are starting to override the signals of the present. And the voices on the air are begging for someone to change the frequency, before it's too late. You won't want to miss it. Until then, good night. And maybe, keep the bathroom door unlocked.